The 2025 draft class is loaded with wide receiver prospects that can make a big impact in fantasy immediately. We talk through the top 3 wide receivers in the 2025 draft class on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and I'm not doing this. I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL, fantasy, betting, and the draft at sportingnews.com.
Today, we are going to dig deep into the top 3 wide receivers in this draft class, but really it's going to be 4 wide receivers because Vinnie and I differ on the wide receiver 3 of this class. So we have a lot to get through today. We already did this experiment with the running backs on yesterday's show. We talked through the top 3-4 running backs in the draft class for fantasy for this upcoming year and their future just in the NFL in general. But let's start at the top here at the wide receiver class. And it's difficult to figure out what the top is, right? Is it Travis Hunter? Is he going to be a wide receiver in the NFL? That we really don't have an answer for yet. He was the Heisman winner at Colorado, but he played both cornerback and wide receiver. And he's good enough to play either position in the NFL. Will a team let him play both? Will a team, force him to play just one? We shall see. But as a wide receiver, he's 6 foot, 188 pounds, fine size, a little bit skinny, right? But he can put some weight on. Good route runner, great ball skills. He's a playmaker, strong at the catch point, despite the smaller frame of weight. And he can be used all over the field in all 3 levels of the field. So he really can be, I do think he can be a wide receiver 1 type of player for a team in the league. 3rd most receiving yards in the Power 5 this past year and tied for 1st in receiving touchdowns. The question comes down to, do you think he'll play wide receiver in the league, Vinny? Or do you think he can play both wide receiver and corner?
Yeah, right now, everyone in the fantasy industry is kind of down on Travis Hunter in terms of not knowing for sure what's going to happen. He's outside of the wide receiver 5s, but really, right now, I think there's a little bit of trepidation with this entire wide receiver class until we have a better indication on where they're going. So it's not just Travis Hunter, but you look at what he can do, and I saw him run routes. I think you have to be careful about using him too much because he's such a good shutdown corner, and his body is just not going to be able to sustain having the same number of snaps and that volume he had at Colorado. It's just not going to happen. And team's going to be a little bit more calculated. I think he's much more valuable staying out there on every defensive snap as a corner than he is at wide receiver because a lot of teams have some options at wide receiver. That said, I think there's going to be some special packages for him. I also think that teams should consider him using as a big slot, and especially teams that are running a lot of the 12 personnel. There's not a lot of teams left that only have 2 receivers that they put out there, but there are some. And if that's the case, then you can bring him in when you're spreading the field with 3 and 11 personnel cases. And then I think he'd be really good as a big slot because he can get open, he can understand coverages, short area turn quickness, and get open. So let's just look early in the draft, right? I mean, you figure the Titans are not going there. Then you get to the Browns. They could definitely use him because Jerry Jeudy is also a movable chess piece all over the field. He ran some inside. He ran some outside. So that would say Jeudy can play outside, and then you could put Hunter in the slot for some key snaps. And we know they need a lot of wide receiver help. The Giants do have Malik Neighbors, so that is still a guy that was very productive as a key target last year, and more so even than Jeudy. You have Darius Slayton, so you think he could play a big slot. Wan'Dale Robinson hasn't been reliable. He's kind of small, so can he get the opportunity there? Then you look at New England. That actually might be the best fit of them all early because, again, they're looking for that slot. We know how important slot can be for Josh McDaniels, maybe a guy with a little bit more size than usual. You get him. You have Mike Vrabel, who did play 2 ways, scored some receiving touchdowns as a tight end for New England and Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. So he knows that you can play a player. Maybe they're okay because they did go out and get Carlton Davis. Do they think, okay, we're okay to adjust our snaps a little bit for the corners and go in that direction? So there's a lot of things they can go. So New England, I think, would be the best landing spot because they would embraces versatility. He could play and learn off Stephon Diggs. I think a lot of that would make sense. But again, I think we need to see his landing spot, and then we got to hear all the coaches and their commitment, how much they're willing. Are they going to give him 30 snaps on offense, something like that? If they give him 30 plus, then we're going to be listening a little bit more on Travis Hunter's value.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the issue, right? Because whatever team drafts him, we'll see what position they mark him down as in the draft. But then I feel like we're going to have to wait for training camp to really see how he's being used. So it's going to take up until probably really close to fantasy draft season to even know how much he'll be used as a wide receiver. But if you play in dynasty fantasy football and you have to make that decision if you want to draft him or not for your dynasty teams, those drafts are much earlier, right? They're normally pretty soon after the NFL draft. So that's going to make it a little bit riskier taking Travis Hunter. But I will say you brought up the Patriots, and that's exactly the best landing spot for him, I think, because you mentioned like they already have good corners. So yeah, they'll still want to use him there probably, but they already have Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis and Marcus Jones. Like they have a good group there. Where they desperately need someone is wide receiver, right? And now with Drake May in his second year and Josh McDaniels' creativity on offense, and then him just working with a bunch of wide receiver threes, basically, and Stephon Diggs coming off an ACL tear, he would have a huge opportunity there. So if he goes to the Patriots, I would feel the most comfortable that he's going to get a lot of playing time as a wide receiver and a lot of targets. And if that's the case, like if he goes to the Patriots, could you see him being a top 20 fantasy wide receiver in year one?
I think that might be a little bit of a reach because we have so many guys there that are more primary targets. I mean, you still have Diggs, and Diggs is probably going to fight for some share if he's healthy, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing with Diggs, and we'll see how good Drake May can make the jump. But yeah, I think they'll be careful with Hunter. I think he's at least a wide receiver 3 if he can nail down a regular slot job. And then we look at that, and I don't know how much volume he's going to get. I think he might be a little bit touchdown and big play dependent as well to really get us to the numbers we need. So I'm a little concerned there that if he doesn't get the volume, he's going to be disappointing. But I think it would be silly for the team that drafts him not to think of him as a two-way player and try to find him a way to get in the offense. Because, again, why would you limit somebody who can change the game for your team? And look, it's something new. With baseball, we've already seen it here with Shohei Ohtani. He was a game changer on both sides, pitching and hitting, and playing the outfield or DH, whatever they needed, he has produced. But we haven't seen that in the NFL yet. It'll be interesting to see if a team lets him do that and see what they can get if they play him regularly.
Now, I feel like the closer we get to the draft, the more I feel like there's a solid chance he could go to the Browns. I don't know if I love that for him for fantasy. Now, yes, there is opportunity there for targets, but they would use him, I do think, on both sides of the ball. You just don't know who the quarterback is, and they're a disaster there, right? So that's the whole issue. But if you had to predict right now, where would you say Travis Hunter is going to go in the draft?
Yeah, right now I think it's either the Giants or Patriots, 3 and 4. I mean, if the Giants pass, it'd have to be someone good, but the Patriots could end up with Abdul Carter as well, and they'd be happy with the pass rush. So right now, the Giants could jump them. I think if he doesn't go to either of those teams, I think the Jaguars would be silly not to take him, work him into that offense. That's also a sneaky landing spot as well, because you look at Gabe Davis, you look at their other receivers right now that they've added behind Brian Thomas Jr., they're more outside types. They need to replace Christian Kirk on the inside. They also lost Evan Ingram at tight end. So that could be a sneaky landing spot at 5. But I don't think he's going to glass past 5. And if the Jaguars did it, they'd probably be ecstatic and definitely find a key role for him.
Yes. Now, this next guy we're going to talk about, he's definitely in contention for that top wide receiver in this draft class. And I would say he is probably the top wide receiver for fantasy in this draft class, and that's Tetairoa McMillan. We will discuss him and talk about best fits right after a quick break.
All right, this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It is an exciting time of the year in the NBA as we count down to the playoffs. They're almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel is making betting so easy for you, whether picking your favorite team or diving into player props. There's all that every night. With the scoring, we've seen it go nuts with Steph Curry. Nikola Jokic have some monster games here of late. So it's only going to get better as we get closer to the playoffs. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets in the same game parlay for a chance to win big. We know it's the Lakers and Mavericks, all that good stuff. Down the stretch, it should be a lot of drama, a lot of fun, and action that you want to get into. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets. That's only at FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue the show. And look at our next, I would say he's the pure wide receiver, that he can only play wide receiver. He can't play corner. It's Tetairoa McMillan of Arizona. Right now, he's ranked as wide receiver 41 in half-point PPR. So he's outside of the wide receiver threes. This is the top wide receiver in the draft. Again, people are waiting for the landing spots. I think they see the early picks, right? And they look at, there's some other receivers there. I don't know if those are the right spots. And they also don't know where he's going to go. So I think that's also coming into play here. Now let's look at McMillan's skill set. 6'4", pretty big dude. What do you expect from him in fantasy? He's kind of built to make some big plays all over the field and finish in the red zone.
Yeah, I really, really like him as a player coming out of Arizona. He's, like you mentioned, big dude. He has a huge catch radius, great body control, good at contested catches, but he's also really good after the catch too. It's not just, okay, make a hard contested catch and that's it. And it's not like a George Pickens type guy, right? Like I do think McMillan has the capabilities that a T. Higgins or a Mike Evans has. He's very close to those guys. It's hard to, put his name in the category with Mike Evans already. Obviously a lower end and much riskier that he'll make it in the NFL. But I do think he has that capability. He can be used all over the field too. He's versatile. So it's going to come down though to the quarterback I think he plays with in the scheme, right? Because he's not going to consistently create separation. That's just not the type of player he is. So he needs a quarterback that's willing to trust him. And he also needs a scheme that is willing to, work with getting him open and finding the holes in the zone for him and all that good stuff. But he was Arizona's offense. I mean, he was everything. He had 1,319 receiving yards last year. No other player on Arizona even had 350 receiving yards. So he was the focal point of their offense, and he did great over the last 2 seasons, 109 receiving yards per game. Most in the FBS among guys to play at least 20 games over those 2 seasons. So I really like McMillan. And again, it comes down to the fit. Personally, my favorite fit for him would be the Panthers with Bryce Young and Dave Canales.
Yeah, and there are some Mike Evans comparisons there. I'll get into them at some point. There at Sporting News, and just looking at how that could translate here, because Dave Canales did work with Mike Evans himself, the OG in Tampa. So we'll see if he can incorporate him into the offense, if they trust Xavier Legette to be like a number 2 type for them going forward. But they definitely do not have a number 1, right? I mean, they were looking at slot veterans and all that, but they haven't had a true go-to guy that you can say is the big play and red zone guy for Bryce Young. So that's definitely a void. The other team that's getting some buzz, and Ashton Genty, we've talked about the running backs, and this could still be a very strong fit for them in Las Vegas. But the Raiders could also look at Tetairoa McMillan, because we've talked about this a lot, that they have Brock Bowers, a great tight end in the making. It's already had a big rookie year. You have Jacoby Myers, who's had a lot of experience playing slot in his previous time with the Patriots and can do that for the Raiders. So that would leave a void for that clear outside number 1. You'd essentially replace Devontae Adams. You have a good quarterback there in Geno Smith that can clean up some things. And you look at Pete Carroll. He's had these type of big receivers before. I don't want to draw this comparison, but he's like the Jermaine Kearse of what they would be looking for, throwing back to the Seattle days, where it's a big dude that you can throw up deep, play off the running game, and make some plays. So I think there's an appeal for him in the Chip Kelly, Carroll era here in Las Vegas. So that's something to look at. But of course, New England, we talked about them needing a receiver. I don't think the good fits here are earlier the Titans, Browns, or Giants, but I don't think he's going to go to any of those teams. I think when you look at it, it starts with the Patriots. The Jaguars could get him, but I don't know if they can go back-to-back with Brian Thomas Jr. You look at the Raiders, and then you look at the Panthers. And that's, I think, the Panthers, I think, would be ideal just because we know he would be the clear number 1, and this offense could be ascending quickly with Bryce Young.
Yeah, the Panthers or the Raiders would definitely increase his fantasy stock greatly. Like I feel like he would jump into the high 20s like instantly in those landing spots just because of the target potential he would have there. One team I'm eyeing, which I don't know if it would be great for fantasy or not, would be the Cowboys. Because you give Dak Prescott that second weapon that they've been looking for so long, right? And it's CeeDee Lamb and Tetairoa McMillan. That would be a very interesting combination. It would make Dak Prescott a lot more interesting for fantasy. But for McMillan, it probably wouldn't be the best thing for his ceiling.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, the Cowboys have kind of holding their cards close to the vest here. If Genty's gone, what do? Do they go after Malachi Starks? Do they look for the best pass rusher on the board? Do they go for Walter Nolan and just go down and go for the best player with the highest upside available? They could do a lot of things with that number 12 pick, and they could even move up or move down. So they have a lot of ways to get different players. Now, wide receiver may not seem like a need for Dallas with CeeDee Lamb, but it totally is because, again, Brand Cooks has moved on. He's back to New Orleans. Jalen Tolbert has had flashes, but not a lot there. And again, you have Jake Ferguson, but if you're going to run this offense with Brian Schottenheimer and they need to stretch the field, make some big plays, Lamb is okay at doing that, but he's really a dominant slot player. Like you get him open in the middle and he can roll with it and just take over games with his volume. But you need a big playmaker who can bring down some balls in the red zone for Prescott. So that's totally not a bad fit, but you're right. It caps the upside when you're already coming in behind the Lamb. Like it's a little different when you come behind a Lamb or a Neighbors versus a Jerry Jeudy, right? Where you'd have a little, or even an aging Stephon Diggs, where you'd have a little bit more potential to be the number one. So interesting thing. McMillan's value has been all over the board, anywhere from really the Raiders at number 6, anywhere to like deep to the Broncos at number 20. So there's been a lot of outcomes for where McMillan can land. I think, again, once we get a landing spot for Hunter and McMillan, it'll be a lot better and easier to rank them. And the only difference is you're not going to have to wait from the coach speak and all that. We know McMillan's going to be a wide receiver. You just figuring out how good of a fit he is with the offense and how quickly he develops chemistry with his new quarterback.
Now, the worst possible thing I feel like is he falls past the Cowboys and then he goes to the Colts or something like that with Daniel Jones and like that. That's the type of quarterback I'm talking about. That he really, obviously, no wide receiver wants to go play with him, but like he needs to be playing with a competent quarterback that trusts McMillan to catch the ball with his very long, tall body and body control. Like, it's going to have to be a quarterback that has accuracy as well, and just to get in those contested catches. But that's definitely not Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson. So please don't go to Indy.
It's a crowd there too with Michael Pittman and Josh Downs.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a crowd, so you don't want to go. You don't want a bad quarterback with a crowd. That's the worst scenario for a rookie wide receiver.
If he goes to the Panthers, I think he has top 20 upside with maybe even top 12 upside, depending how well he can progress from college to the NFL. But yeah, I'm excited to see where McMillan goes. Definitely in this class, he'll be my top fantasy wide receiver until we know more about Travis Hunter, at least. But I have another guy I really, really like in this draft class, and I'm excited for him in 2025. And you do as well. We'll talk about those two right after a quick break. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet healthcare. Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy is everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. And auto ship is a game changer. You can set up automatic deliveries for food, treats, or any essentials you never run out of, so you could never run out of them. You can easily change or cancel at any time. I have auto ship for a bunch of things on Chewy. I have 3 dogs, and I have my one dog's Chewy toy on auto ship. I have my dog's tennis balls. I have their milk bones. I have my cat's wet food. Like, everything comes on time. I always know they have my back, and my animals will always be fed and happy and with their toys. And they also have an awesome customer service team, so that you don't have to worry if anything goes wrong. They will take care of it. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first offer your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. All right, we're going to get into our third ranked wide receiver in this draft class, and we have different guys here. So, Vinny, tell me who's your third favorite wide receiver in this draft class for fantasy for their career in the NFL.
Yeah, I actually have a 3A, 3B situation. I can't decide between these two guys.
Okay.
Well, I'll save your guy, but I do like Luther Burden out of Missouri, and I think what you have to know about him is he's best suited to be a slot guy, a route running person that gets open all the time. So he could really be an effective player in the NFL, but I think he has to play inside a lot, and maybe that's the limitation, but I also think that could land him in a couple of good spots here. So I do actually like the Rams quite a bit for him because I think he's a good technical receiver that could really fit well in Sean McVay's system. Here, I think if the Raiders would trade down or look in the situation, he also did look good here to help them. But I say right now that the Rams are the absolute best fit for Luther Burden. He just is a guy that gets open. He's quick. I could also see him maybe could be a bit of a reach pick for the Bengals, but I could see that as well if they choose not to go defensively with Walter Nolan or someone like that. So again, he's just a slot that gets open for any team that needs that inside guy to make a lot of plays. But that said, I don't think he's going to be a top 10 guy. There's been some varied values for him, like outside anywhere from 15 to the end of the first round. Like, I don't think he'll make it all the way down at the bottom, but he's just a good technician. He can get open, and he's going to be a guy that we're looking for in half point PPR, just a volume-based receiver. Maybe the Patriots trade down from their spot, and then they look at Burden as being their slot option, but that's who I look at the most here for him. And again, he's very good at getting open. He's got some very good quickness, hands, and he just has to be in a good spot with volume to make it happen. If that's the case, then we can see him as a nice sleeper here in fantasy. But again, it's really hard sometimes to not have a team attached, but there are some teams that really could use Burden and his ability to get open.
Yeah, and a lot of people are comparing him to a Deebo Samuel type. So he will have, like, the system he goes to will be very, very important because, and you know who needs a Deebo Samuel? It's Deebo Samuel's old team in the 49ers, right? So obviously at number 11, that would be too high for them. But if he were to fall into the second round and he landed with the 49ers, that could get very interesting. I don't love going after guys like Luther Burden in fantasy and early in their careers because I just feel like it takes longer for these type of gadget type of players to take off. But we've seen it with Rashee Rice and Deebo Samuel himself, right? That they can be very productive in the league. It just takes a second. And then also you have to be in the right system. And then we've also seen a lot of these type of guys kind of fail. So that's why I'm a little bit lower on Burden. The guy I really, really like is Emeke Egbuka out of Ohio State. I just think he can be such a great possession wide receiver in the league and be great for fantasy, especially in those PPR leagues and half PPR. But he has a good build, 6'1.5 inches, 192 pounds, fast. Plenty fast enough at 4.48, 40 at his pro day, 38-inch vert. Like, he's not going to be the most athletic guy on the field, but he's plenty athletic enough to be a good player. Great route runner, knows how to separate, very, very smart player, finds the holes in the defense. He's just really that complete receiver that knows how to track the ball and can be that possession receiver like a Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, I feel like he could play that type of role, which has been so great. And where I would love to see him go is the Broncos, because I think that makes sense with the order of the draft, 20th overall. I don't think that's too high for Egbuka to go. And he would be such a good complement to Courtland Sutton, who's that guy who's not the best separator, right? And who's better at the contested catches and who gives you that length and toughness. And then you added Egbuka for Bo Nix to be your true possession receiver and make those plays for you, like those first down plays for you, and just be consistent. I do think, like, if he lands with a team like that and can get the targets, he can have a Ladd McConkey type rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of good spots here for Egbuka. And again, I think he actually might get drafted ahead of Burden because he has a little bit more position versatility, even though I might like Burden to be better overall at his slots type. I think Egbuka could have more value at multiple positions for his team. And then you look at Green Bay, they could look at him and finally use a first round draft pick on a receiver, get a guy that can get open. You look at the Texans, right? There's some history there with CJ Stroud there. So there's some chemistry you can develop there. If the Raiders were to trade down or trade back into the first round, they can look at him because he just played with Chip Kelly. And then you go to the Chargers, that's a potential as well because of his ability to kind of do everything well, playing off Ladd McConkey. So there's just a lot of really good spots. I think he has better landing spots overall than Burton. Burton has to be very specific, where really McMillan too. But when you look at this, I think Egbuka, wherever he goes, look, we also feel comfortable because we've seen it with most of these Ohio State receivers. Even though Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave are disappointed, we know where they can be in fantasy, and they flashed that before. Jackson Smith-Njigba, we know how good he's been, and Marvin Harrison will get there. So we know this system, the Ohio State wide receiver, is one of the best fantasy things to target going back a long time. So we have a little bit more comfort level overall with Egbuka. So I can see that and him being a little bit more reliable in fantasy. Overall, he just has to get in a situation where he has some good targets, playing off another good receiver where he can get open and with a decent quarterback. And luckily, there's a lot of those situations. I mean, playing with Justin Herbert, playing with Bo Nix, playing with even Geno Smith. I think there's a lot of potential here for Egbuka. So I'm excited to see what he can do as the next Ohio State guy. He's kind of the unsung guy. They all have the other flash, but he's the kind of the veteran that's plugged away there for a while. Now it's his turn to shine and get a first-round pick.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention like the Bills could be a spot for him too later
so
in the first round, and that would be, we'd get real excited for him in fantasy then. But that is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. But for your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.